Welcome into the High School OT studios. Evan Moesta here in Raleigh. Happy week 6 of the high school football season here in North Carolina. Final scores are starting to come in. Scoreboards across the state are starting to hit zero. Some exciting games across the state. Some rain-filled games across the state as well. We will get to it all here on the High School OT postgame show presented by our partners at Talk It Out NC. There is never a bad time to start the conversation to stop underage drinking. You can learn more about how you can have those conversations by visiting talkitoutnc.org. Again, that is talkitoutnc.org. Let's get right into things. First, with the Talk It Out NC statewide scoreboard, and that is where we have our top 25 results from around North Carolina. Let's start things with top-ranked Grimsley, the Whirlies. They keep on rolling, a 66-6 win tonight over Western Guilford. As I mentioned, a lot of rain in North Carolina. It pushed back a lot of games, especially down in Charlotte. Huff is in the fourth quarter, up 37-0 on West Mecklenburg. The number 2 ranked Huskies are quickly rolling to a final there with a running clock. Providence Day at last check was up 2 scores on the Cannon School. That was in the third quarter. That has since moved to the fourth. If you have a final score there, you can go to HighSchoolOT.com, find the report scores button right there on the front page of the website and submit that final score, and we can get it up on the Talk It Out NC statewide scoreboard. Another game down in Charlotte. This is probably the best game in the state right now. West Charlotte and Mallard Creek, number 4 versus number 5. The third straight week that Mallard Creek is playing a top 10 team in the state. And right now it's the Lions 19-9 in the fourth quarter. High School OT's Joel Bryant is at that game. He has updates right now on social media. If you want to go check out the live updates from that game, and hopefully he can join us here once that goes final. Again, 19-9 West Charlotte. Rakeem Finch, a pair of touchdowns for the Lions. That has them up so far in this one. Number 6, Weddington. They squeaked out a 21-6 win over Sun Valley. Another update, that Huff game I had mentioned, it was 37-0 in the fourth. Huff just scored again, now 43-0 in that one. And then another big top 25 battle, Millbrook and Rollsville, 2 teams that people feel like can contend in the 8A East. The Wildcats scored 21 points to open the game. They win 28-7 over Rollsville. That is Millbrook's first win over the Rams since 2021. We roll on with some top 25 scores on the Talk It Out NC statewide scoreboard. Number 9, Hoggard, a 34-7 win over West Brunswick to open up conference play for the Vikings. Tim Hauer from Coastal Preps will join us soon to talk about the big win there for the Vikings. Cleveland, they played at 4 o'clock today. That game was supposed to kick off yesterday at 7, Thursday at 7. That got moved back due to inclement weather to 4 o'clock today, and the Rams remain unbeaten with a 42-28 win over South Garner-Watauga. They go back down to Buncombe County for the second time in 6 days and pick up another blowout win, 49-7. The Pioneers just continue to roll in that one. Jordan, we had that as our High School OT Game of the Week presented by Alpaca Chicken. We'll get to more on that game with J. Mike Blake in a minute. The Falcons, 28-7 in a battle of unbeatens. There were only 3 matchups tonight in the state that involved 2 undefeated teams going up against one another. And in this conference clash, it is Jordan picking up the 28-7 win. Ashbrook, 44-0 over North Gaston. Leesville Road, they continue to roll 56-0 over Athens Drive the Pride. They have a big game next week against Millbrook. We'll get into more of that one in just a moment. Some more top 25 scores from around North Carolina. South Point all over Huss tonight, 53-6. East Lincoln, they continue to put up some big numbers, 57-0 over Bunker Hill. And then Brevard defeating North Henderson tonight, 52-8. We welcome you back in here to the High School OT studios. I mentioned number 9, Hoggard. They picked up a 34-7 win tonight over West Brunswick. I bring in Tim Hauer now to the High School OT postgame show. Tim, it kind of felt like from the start this was Hoggard's league to run away with, but if there was just one team up until this point in week 6 that there could have even moderately been a chance of challenging the Vikings, it felt like it could have been this West Brunswick team given their start to the season. But again, it just, in the end, proves to be too much. Hoggard just keeps on rolling, it feels like.
Yeah, Hoggard looked really impressive tonight. I know you were talking about that Millbrook-Rollsville game. A lot of people think, those 3 teams, Hoggard, Millbrook, Rollsville, probably the 3 best teams in the 8A East. So, while they were battling it out, Hoggard was kind of handing it to West Brunswick, just doing it with a lot of everything. I mean, Matthew Boring, 20 of 25, 216 yards, 3 touchdowns, just continues to play at a high level. What Hoggard has done the last couple weeks now is they've run the ball really well. Didn't have 100 rushing yards in either of their first 2 wins. Still were able to obviously come away with victories in those games. But that was the one thing early in the season that I was a little concerned about. Could Hoggard run the ball to take some of that pressure off Matthew Boring? Since then, they've done a really good job of that. 176 yards tonight from a couple different featured backs. And then the defense is always what Hoggard is. West Brunswick had 9 yards of offense at halftime. It was 253-9 at halftime. So the 34-7 probably could have been, a little bit worse than that. But, Craig Underwood and his staff always do a really good job of getting a lot of players in games, in these type of games. And so they don't typically run up the score a tremendous amount against some of these teams.
How does Hoggard stay sharp? Because I feel like at this point of the season, they feel very confident about where they're at. But to stay at this level, obviously, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier today, or you brought it up on Twitter. Like, there's going to be some buys mixed in late in that season, whether it's right there in that kind of postseason mix. How does this Hoggard team keep this momentum and sustain it? But do you think it might be easier for them to do that because there's so much that's building, because it's kind of a newer team, newer pieces? Do you feel like kind of that growth is going to allow them to kind of keep this thing rolling, or how do they kind of sustain that momentum?
Yeah, I asked Everett Hordeman, one of their better defensive linemen, that tonight after the game. I said, you guys are getting hyped up quite a bit. I told him, especially by me, like, I'm kind of hyping you guys up a lot. How do you stay, focused on 1 week ahead and not look to, maybe a potential matchup against a Millbrook or a Rollsville? And he gave a great answer. He said, our coaches won't allow us to do that. They continue to tell us that this team right now, this team this year has not done anything in the playoffs. If you don't need to think about those teams yet because we're not there yet, and you haven't gotten to that point in the season yet. So I think they're kind of challenging themselves in a sense, in that, they're not going to say it, but I think they know that they're probably going to roll pretty easily through the Mid-Eastern Conference. Now, next week is a rivalry game against New Hanover. Things can get a little weird in rivalry games, so you never know. But if Hoggard plays like they did tonight and like they have done for the first 5 games this year, they really shouldn't be challenged in the conference. And so they've got to find ways to motivate themselves, because it may not come that pressure may not come on the scoreboard, but if they want to do big things, they know that they have to focus. And sometimes, their best opponent that week is themselves at practice.
There are a lot of games. The theme of this week has seemed to be a lot of teams are hitting bye weeks. A lot of teams are opening conference play. As you look across the region, I know not every region of the state this week was the most active that it could be in high school football, but as you look at some results, anything else stand out? Obviously a big game tonight between Ashley and Laney, in terms of teams that are kind of jockeying, I guess, for those second, third positions in the league.
Yeah, I think that was an important game for Laney, especially because they had lost to this West Brunswick team last week. So, you start the conference 0-2. Again, you still have North Brunswick, New Hanover, Hoggard left on the schedule. It would have been tough for Laney to climb back into the race for kind of that second or third spot. But Laney was able to hold on for a 21-18 victory. I heard kind of how the end of that game went. Ashley, I guess, had the ball first and goal with about 7-8 minutes left, and had an intentional grounding penalty that kind of backed them up a bunch. Got a lot of that yardage back on third down, but had to try like a 35-yard field goal, and it missed wide. So that kept Laney on top 21-18. And then Laney was able to keep the ball for like the last 6 minutes and not ever give it back to Ashley. So a good bounce back win for Laney. But both of those teams still trying to figure them out. It feels like the league as a whole, outside of Hoggard, we still don't know like what any of these teams are, because they're so up and down. 1 week have a good week, 1 week don't have a good week. So, it was a strong league last year. did really well in the playoffs. I don't want to say it's not strong, but it's definitely not as balanced as it was last year. Still teams really trying to figure out what their identity is and who they are.
Yeah, certainly. And obviously they're working in some new coaches for a couple of those programs, New Hanover being another there. But a good win for Coach Brooks and Laney tonight. Anything we can expect this upcoming week on Coastal Preps, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, other than football down here, we've got really 4 of the better soccer teams in the state. I know this is a football show, but the Wilmington schools are really doing well in soccer. We had a couple of those matchups last week. You were down here, and I got to see for one of those. So, yeah, we'll continue to kind of monitor the soccer. Hoggard-Topsail volleyball is next week. That's a big one down here as well. So, yeah, it was a little bit of a lighter schedule for football this week. Only 4 area teams played, but things will pick up for certain next week as we get rolling again into the middle of the football season and kind of towards the end of some of these other sports seasons.
Well, that is Tim Hauer from Coastal Preps as he took in tonight Hoggard's 34-7 win over West Brunswick. Thanks for joining us, Tim.
Yep, thanks, Evan.
We move on here on the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. Let's take a look at some final scores from around the state of North Carolina. A thrilling one down in Union County tonight is Charlotte Catholic. They were down 7-0 to Porter Ridge with 2:11 left to play. The Cougars, they punch one in to tie the game, force overtime. Porter Ridge scores first in overtime. They do not hit the extra point. And then Charlotte Catholic comes down, pushes their way in for the lead or for the tie. And then the extra point is good, and that sends them to a 14-13 road win tonight. West Carteret escapes Swansboro 26-25. As Tim had mentioned, Laney defeating Ashley 21-18. Central Davidson, a huge win over High Point Central tonight, 69-0. Enloe, a big win over Wakefield, 40-14. Patton and Drawn, Patton with the win, 31-0. East Meck defeating Ballantyne Ridge 19-13. Robbinsville defeating Andrews 56-0. Franklin comes away with a big win over Pisgah. Franklin winning that one 37-26. Lee County escaping West Johnston 10-7. Robinson, a 2-score win against Salisbury. They pitch a shutout 14-0. And Randleman coming away with a 21-19 win, a close one over Lexington tonight. Now here on the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC, we're going to welcome in Jeff Link and David Jones from Scoreboard Radio. Welcome in, guys. How you doing?
Doing great. Dodged all the rain in northwest North Carolina. Looks like Wilkes County got drowned, maybe a few other areas, but super humid to super windy in the second half. Had a entertaining football game here, and the main thing was we dodged the weather. Hope you guys are doing well in the capital city.
Yeah, we dodged it as well. It looked like the Wilkes Central game, not as fortunate there. And it looked like East and West were in a little bit of a battle at last check there. But how'd your game go tonight, guys?
Well, kind of is a weird game, Evan. I mean, High Brighton beat East Burke 37-8, kind of a bounce-back game for the Panthers, who lost a heart-breaking, slobber-knocking game kind of between the two best teams in this conference last week. And it was one of those games we were talking in our post-game show that, yeah, High Brighton won 37-8, but it didn't feel like it was a game where they put their foot on the gas and, waved as they drove by. East Burke able to move the football between the 20s a lot. But when you look at the total yards, 386 for the Panthers, 225 through the air, compared to just 239 for East Burke, and a bunch of that came in the second half with a running clock and, going up and down the field, being able to possess the football. But I gave High Brighton a very good grade for the bounce-back win, not an elite bounce-back, but as we said, it's always better to make adjustments and coach them up after a win than a loss. So 37-8, High Brighton's 4-1, 1-1 in the conference. East Burke 1-4 and 1-1 as well.
Yeah, East Burke was coming off that win over Patton. We mentioned Patton getting a big win tonight, overdrawn 31-0, I believe that was. That was a battle of teams that were searching for a top win there, or a first win, excuse me. Thoughts on that result?
Yeah, Patton, it had been, I believe, September 29th, 2022, the last time they had won 18-game losing streak. Of course, they didn't have varsity football. last season. But we were talking about that as well on our post-game show too. Good for Patton, good for Billy Wisnut, longtime assistant coach at Freedom. Patton High School gets his chance to be a head coach and played JVs last year. And Drone had some flashes in the pan a couple years ago, made it to a 1A Western Regional Final. They're just not a good football team this year, and that's not to take anything away from Chris Powell, a good football coach. They just don't have a lot of athletes over there right now that can compete at this level. I think they'll get there eventually, but it was good for Patton, especially last week after losing to East Burke in the fashion that they did, to bounce back and get that win. And that's what we're talking about with this Western Piedmont 3A, 4A conference. We know East Rutherford is kind of the leader in the clubhouse. They win tonight 30-0 over West Caldwell. We think that High Brighton's going to be the second best team in this conference, but who's going to be the third best team? You're talking about that in your last segment of who are some of these teams that are going to be second and third place in that conference. RS Central wins their second game in a row tonight. They take care of Chase tonight. So High Brighton has Chase next week. Is it RS Central that's the third best team? Could it be West Caldwell that's the third best team? And I think if you're East Burke and you're West Caldwell, Chase, RS Central, you're looking at all these games and saying, okay, where are we going to pick out our wins? Somebody's going to have to finish third in this conference and probably get a playoff bid, so why not us? And I think that's for Chris Cogdell and his team tonight at East Burke. I felt like they did some good things. Bennett, their quarterback, is a pretty good little quarterback. He's not going to win all conference quarterback, but he keeps plays alive with his feet. He's able to deliver a good ball to his receivers. They've got two decent running backs. So, East Burke and West Caldwell play next week. I think right now you may give the advantage to East Burke going into that. I think they're a little bit deeper than what West Caldwell is. We've seen both of those teams this year. But who's going to finish third in this conference? It's yet to be seen. But I think the top two are definitely East Rutherford and High Brighton. And for High Brighton, got some things on film tonight that they can coach the players up on Monday. You get a win. Got to clean up the penalties. This is uncharacteristic for High Brighton committing, especially the 15-yard variety, the unsportsmanlike penalties. That's something that's got to be a little bit of concern. You want your kids to have some grittiness and play to the whistle, but a couple of times tonight they let their emotions get the best of them.
High Brighton next week taking on Chase again. But, these teams trying to duke it out for those middle spots in the conference. How important was it for High Brighton tonight to bounce back and get that momentum heading into that game against Chase?
Well, we were talking about this was a High Brighton football program that had made the state playoffs 22 consecutive years, and then last year, went off the rails. So we're talking about that with Sam Mackey in pregame and felt like they had a good response, kind of reestablished their identity a little bit this week. Really kind of went to the air a lot. Elon Lipford, the quarterback, 11 for 14 passing, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns, 161 yards on the ground. I really think High Brighton was trying out some things in the passing game tonight to see what they may be able to put into use a little bit further down the road. So I think High Brighton got what they wanted, minus the penalties. As Jeff said, this is a team averaging 8 penalties and 75 yards a game, and they were right on those numbers tonight pretty much. And that's something that, as you extend into November, because High Brighton is going to be favored in the remainder of their games, as will East Rutherford, you cannot give up 15 yards multiple times per game to quality opponents. So that part is an F. The rest of the game for the Panthers, probably a B+ tonight. They'll have a chance again against Chase. And then RS Central, as Jeff said, probably the biggest roadblock the rest of the way. We're already excited for next Friday night, Northwest 6A, 7A matchup. Watauga, undefeated, at Freedom, undefeated. It's going to be a raucous environment down at the Catawba River. Should be an exciting game, and the conference championship will be decided next Friday night.
Yeah, I can't wait for that one. I saw Watauga play last Saturday against Irwin, and they are so impressive. Even without Maddox Green, it's just it's kept on rolling. It's such a well-oiled machine at this point that it feels like they're at the point of no return. I mentioned that East Wilkes, West Wilkes score. They went into a delay. They resumed within the last half hour. They're in the final moments of that third quarter right now, with East holding a 20-9 lead over West. Any other results that you guys saw from tonight that stand out?
Yeah, I thought the game that just finished was Newton Conover winning 36-35 over Bandy's. Bandy's had the lead in that ball game. Newton Conover gets the late touchdown. They go for 2. They get it. With 2 minutes to go, they hold on for the victory. So we felt like Bandy's had kind of turned the corner, but that puts Bandy's now, a good Bandy's team, at 2-3, 1-2. Talk about games next week. I thought this week it was kind of the build-up. For next week, Hickory takes care of North Lincoln 49-6. North Lincoln really just falling on hard times this season. Maiden takes care of Fred T. Ford 47-0. So next week that sets up a 4-0 Hickory in conference play against a 4-0 Maiden in conference play. East Lincoln also 4-0 in that conference. They won tonight over Bunker Hill. That's going to be a great game next week between Hickory and Maiden. So that was the game that was kind of big there. And you've got McDowell's 4-1 on the season. Yeah, McDowell. Yeah, they're 4-1 on the season. They went up to North Buncombe tonight and picked up a big win. West Lincoln Burns, they had a long rain delay as well too. Burns, they just got back underway. Burns leads at the half, 34-12 in that one. But looking forward to that Hickory Maiden game next week. I think that one's going to be a good one. West Caldwell and East Burke next week's going to be a good one. But the best one around here that everybody's eyes are going to be on, as we said, is going to be Watauga and Freedom in Morganton.
We'll add one quick thought to that East Wilkes West Wilkes game. The information that we were getting was the West Wilkes kicker had made 2 field goals of 40 yards plus, and obviously a third field goal. Don't know the distance in that one, but the weather reports we were getting in that one, Wilkes County just getting pounded. So that's a big game for West Wilkes. They beat Wilkes Central last week. That's just the first time in 20 years that the Blackhawks have beaten the Eagles. I'm sure you'll check in with our buddy Aikman Chambers later, but that's kind of the battle for supremacy over in the largest county in the state. So that one sounds like it's going to go down to the wire as well.
To talk to Aikman, that game would need to end. It's been a marathon. that would
Aikman's ready to get in bed. He's got to be a guest on our show at 10 o'clock in the morning. He's going to have to get up and chug some Red Bulls about 9:30.
Speaking of your show, what can we expect there and coming up from you guys?
It'll be bad like usual.
We'll have a recap of tonight's game highlights. We'll also we'll do all the scores. We're going to talk college football. I'm going to duck out after the first hour. I'm heading down your way. I'm heading down for the NC State Virginia Tech game tomorrow. It was rivalry week for David and I because I'm an East Burke graduate. He's a Highbright graduate. I'm a Virginia Tech fan. He's an NC State fan. If the Washington Commanders had played the Panthers this week, it had just been rivalry week all the way around. But I think he's going to get the better of me. He's already up 1-0, and I think it's going to be 2-0 after tomorrow night in Raleigh. But we'll be talking college football. David is going to do a good tribute to Sean Clark. David knew Sean personally, the former Appalachian coach. So looking forward to hearing that tribute as well.
Hey, Jeff, the Hokies might need you to dress out tomorrow.
Well, everybody keeps opting out. I'll let Kyron throw it to me.
I would walk to Raleigh, and I would pay full face price to see Jeff Link put on a number 19 jersey and trot out there just to see Isaiah Shirley hit him one time.
Well, as always,
man, I break his ankles. He ain't got nothing.
Well, we appreciate you guys as always, and can't wait to talk to you next week. That's Jeff Link and David Jones from Scoreboard Radio. Thanks, guys.
See you, Evan. Appreciate it.
We roll on here on the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. We're going to take a quick break. We had mentioned in the open that there were 3 unbeaten matchups across the state this week, one of which being the High School OT Game of the Week presented by Alpaca Peruvian Chicken. J. Mike Blake will join us and talk about Jordan's big win in just a second. But first, a message from our partners at Talk It Out NC.
Raising kids is a roller coaster. Sometimes you laugh, sometimes you cry. But most times you wonder how your kid turned out so well. That's how. You did the hard work, made the right decisions, like talking about alcohol before it could be a problem. Go to talkitoutnc.org. Get resources on how to talk about underage drinking. So Mom, Dad, keep up the good work. It's worth it. Talk early. Talk often. Talk It Out NC.
Welcome back to the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. Just like winning some of these big games that we're talking about, preventing underage drinking takes a lot of teamwork. Parents and teens, you can visit talkitoutnc.org. Again, that is talkitoutnc.org to get all of the resources that you need to start the conversation today about the risks that surround underage drinking. Join Talk It Out NC to make smart and safe choices. We bring in J. Mike Blake here to the High School OT post-game show. J. Mike tonight was in Durham as the number 15 ranked Jordan Falcons picked up a big win over Apex Friendship. In the open, I talked about that Millbrook-Rolesville score and how Millbrook jumped out to an early lead and then just held on the rest of the way. It was almost an identical result in this Jordan game, both finishing with 28-7 final scores. But J. Mike, the thing that stands out in this one was the stat line from quarterback Landon Melton. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so Landon Melton, the story is about to go up on High School OT. My lead is protect Landon Melton's legs and arms at all costs, because both of those things were so important for Jordan to break away in this one. First Falcons drive of the game, I should say. They're back in their own, near their own 20, and it's 4th down. And usually this is the time where you're going to see a team try to do a quick count or try to get the other team to jump off sides. Instead, they run it. And Melton is one of the few design runs he had all night. He breaks through the first line of defense, bounces it to the outside, turns on the jets, and just kind of like shocking everyone that because he could have easily been tripped up for a short gain. Instead, it's a 76-yard touchdown. And, and you think he was doing big plays there. He wasn't. At one point, he had 4 completions for like 185 yards. Because on the second drive that Jordan has, also in the first quarter, about 3 minutes later, he's on 3rd down. He's kind of scrambling. He takes a shot as he kind of launches one deep, and it's Deuce Sumter, who is all alone behind the secondary, and he finds him, just puts it right in the breadbasket. Deuce Sumter runs on in for a touchdown. So he has a 76-yard run and a 71-yard pass in the first quarter. And Jordan was just in control of this game, 21-0 at halftime. Melton had another touchdown pass. He ends this game. This is the stat line. This is what made him a very easy player of the game. It was funny because people don't know, but you text me like, "Hey, who do you think's player of the game?" And I realized you couldn't see the stats I was keeping.
I was like, I'll take his word for it.
I was like, trust me. And I was like, oh wait, I haven't linked my stats where Evan can see them. Landon Melton, 12 of 21 passing, 309 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. On the ground, 10 carries, 108 yards, 1 touchdown. So 100 yards on the ground, 300 in the air, and no turnovers all night in a game that's, we'll see what happens with Panther Creek down the line, but we think this was the Quad City 7 Conference Championship play tonight, and a strong 28-7 win. And I tell you, it could have been even more lopsided, but Apex Friendship did make a stop inside the 5 on Jordan. And also Apex Friendship could have at the same time been closer. Apex Friendship was stopped in the red zone twice, got no points out of it. Jordan had to kind of bow up defensively. And credit to Apex Friendship. They had some really pesky guys. On defense, you had 2 guys who I just kept calling their name all night. I want to make sure I get them right here. Tyler Gobble and Sam Clodfelter, 2 linebackers who were everywhere. And then quarterback for Apex Friendship, Ethan McGarrigan, 19 of 36 passing. Also no turnovers for Apex Friendship. They just got 2 red zone stops. It came out of it empty-handed. But McGarrigan extended plays with his feet and found guys downfield. Jordan's secondary is very good. You need to buy time, and McGarrigan did that in a losing effort tonight. But again, like, you kind of look at the rest of the schedule. Now you can kind of circle. I think it's October 17th when Jordan goes to Panther Creek. That's probably now the next biggest game in this conference, one of 2 conferences in the state that features only 8A schools.
Yeah, and a quick and efficient one, as you mentioned there. Not a bad game from Apex Friendship when you look at how their stat lines turned out there. I think one of the intriguing things, though, J. Mike, about this league is that the East-West line, as of right now, cuts right through the middle of tonight's matchup, where you have Jordan, who's probably going to go west, and Apex Friendship, who's probably the westernmost East team. Obviously, that line can fluctuate over the next 4 or 5 weeks, but what are you seeing right now out of this? And we know how loaded the 8A West is.
Yeah.
Where does Jordan kind of stand in this? Because obviously, if you're coaching Antonio King, if you get over 400 all-purpose yards out of Landon Melton, you're going to win most nights.
Yeah, they have such a big play ability that makes them a wild card if they go to the 8A West. And I only say wild card because obviously I mean, they're number 15 in the state for a reason. They can compete with those people. But it's also a question of like, hey, they don't ever see a team from Charlotte or the Triad in the regular season. So it's a little bit throws you into a mix when you go out there into the playoffs. You haven't seen that style of play, perhaps. And maybe in the future, Jordan, looking at this, maybe in the future they try to pick up some of those games from teams out of the 704, since that's who you'll likely be seeing in the playoffs. Again, the big playability was great for Jordan. I think defensively, they're thinking in their mind, they're like, we've got to get off the field a little bit more. McGarrigan scrambling around was able to keep a lot of things alive. The run defense of Jordan was phenomenal. They held Apex Friendship to just 24 yards rushing on 15 carries. But, there were some times when a back-breaking play on third down where McGarrigan has time or extended a play and found someone open, and all of a sudden Jordan was on the field for a long time defensively. That's maybe, again, this is me just like saying, okay, playoff-wise, when you start to get nitpicky, and how do you go out there and take on a Mallard Creek or a West Charlotte? That's going to be the things that Jordan's going to have to improve upon. Another thing, like Noah Clark, defensive lineman, offensive lineman from Jordan. I don't know. I can't think, and I don't want to say definitively, lest I lift somebody off this. I don't know if there's a better two-way lineman in the state. He's paving the way. Behind him on the offensive line, Jordan ran for some tough yardage tonight. Damian Hayes had 92 yards on 27 carries, so just a grinder. But on defense, I mean, he's the guy making McGarrigan run out of the pocket. Clark is just in there in no time. And that's why Apex Friendship had to go to the air so much. Is you had a number of Falcons players ready to take the handoff for him. Okay, they were back there in the backfield ready to take the handoff from the running back. They were in there so quick. That's going to bode well for them. And I think it's just the big play offense. I mean, hey, you need those. And it's great if you get them early, like you did tonight, you play with a lead and kind of dictate the game, make the other team have to catch up to you. All the better come playoff time.
Again, a 28-7 win tonight for number 15 ranked Jordan over Apex Friendship in the high school OT game of the week presented by Alpaca Peruvian Chicken. J-Mike, you have another top 25 matchup next week as Leesville Road heads on the road to play Millbrook. That is another game that has some really big implications atop a conference in 8A. Leesville a 56-0 win tonight, and then Millbrook a marquee 28-7 win over Rollsville. You and I had talked about that matchup between the Wildcats and the Rams on HighSchoolOT Press Box last Sunday night. But now that you've seen that result, now that you see that Leesville Road continues to keep rolling, mind you, the Pride's only loss this year was a game against Jordan where Jordan had to hit a game-winning field goal in week 1 in a game that Leesville Road had led for a lot of that night. What do you anticipate ahead of next Friday night's big game on the HighSchoolOT game of the week over at Millbrook?
Well, I think the Millbrook-Rollsville game kind of played out the way you and I had talked about with Millbrook, being aggressive defensively, getting defensive points on the board. I think with Leesville, if Leesville protects the ball, they're going to have a chance against Millbrook. Easier said than done, but Leesville under Ben Kolstad is just so disciplined, and they do not shoot themselves in the foot. They don't get in their own way. They make you have to beat them, and some nights you do, right? If you have a really talented team the way Millbrook does. I see that one as being a little, honestly, I'd be surprised if it was 21-point margin like what you saw tonight with Rollsville Millbrook. I just think that the matchups are a little bit different. And I think Leesville's dangerous. Leesville, if they held Jordan to 22 points, then I think that bodes well with what they can do with the matchup that Millbrook brings. It's just going to be, I think it's going to come down to the wire. I hope it is. Like, we've had some really good matchups all year long in HighSchoolOT game of the week, and I'm excited to be there. And Evan, I know you and I together, we've been to like 500 or so high schools, and you've been to some I haven't, or I've been to a basketball game in a place where you haven't seen that sport or whatever. Evan, I've never seen a football game at Millbrook.
Where you're getting their homecoming game.
I'm getting their home game. I'm getting the full experience. I've probably been to every sporting event at Millbrook except the home football game. And now I finally get to do it on a big stage, on a big night, homecoming night next week.
Yeah, after watching that Millbrook-Rolesville game today, I think, we were talking about it a little bit in the open with Tim Hauer when we were talking about Hoggard, and Hoggard's like, the Vikings don't want to get too far ahead of themselves, but I think, let's be real, like, they're looking at what's ahead of them in their schedule. They really are that perennial, like, top 2 or 3 favorite in the 8A East. Millbrook getting this defining win tonight, I feel like if you were to ask the Wildcats, they would have told you, yeah, this is not a shock to us. But now that the clock is at 0 and they see what the result looks like, it really does feel like Millbrook and Rolesville are kind of in this tier that is a little bit more unique to the Rolesvilles and Leesvilles. You talk about how Coach Kolstad is so disciplined and the way his teams play. My takeaway from today's results is that Leesville-Rolesville game is going to be incredible in a couple of weeks. I think it's one of the final games of the regular season. That Leesville team is going to match up very well against that Rolesville team, and that could be really intriguing because that could be that battle for the second or third spot in that in the conference if Millbrook is able to defeat Leesville next week. I think what bodes well for Millbrook going into next Friday is what was on display tonight, and that was the fact that their front seven gave Rolesville's line, which it wasn't the Rolesville offensive line of last year, and it wasn't Braden Atkinson at quarterback like it was last year. That Millbrook defense had its way with Rolesville tonight. Yeah. Rolesville just could not get upfield. It could not get big chunk plays. It could not establish anything in the run game. The very first play of the game, Marquez Wilbert on Millbrook, who had a night of all nights for Millbrook. He flushed Caleb Williams out of the pocket on the game's first play and made him throw the ball out of bounds and just hit him right there, and it set the tone for the entire game. Obviously, Quentin Cipher scores twice. He catches a touchdown as a tight end, and then Rashad Streets has a strip sack that Cipher scoops and scores, and from there, Millbrook just continued to roll on to a victory there. But I think that size on the Millbrook defense is just too much for anybody in that conference to handle. And I think my focus now, when I look at 8A East football, now shifts to, is it going to be Millbrook or Hoggard? Hoggard beat Millbrook last year in the playoffs. Obviously, a different Hoggard team. They don't have some of the size that they had on the line. They don't have some of the run game that they had a year ago. They don't have Nas Session on the outside like they had a year ago. But they're another team that is just so well coached and so well disciplined, and they have a really good quarterback that, I think is going to give anybody in the state issues in Matthew Boring. But I think when you look at this Millbrook team, if they continue to refine their offense, that second half was a little lackluster tonight. It was 21-0 at halftime. They play 7-7 the rest of the way. Millbrook gets a dagger at the end to win it 28-7. But that first half for Millbrook, that little stretch that they have where you have the Cipher touchdown, the strip sack and score, and then you punch in one more score, I believe it was Brylas and McCullers had a nice run on third down for a touchdown. I think if you're Millbrook and you look at that blueprint, you feel really good about your chances against Leesville next week. I don't think Leesville has the depth of talent that Millbrook has, but it should be a very exciting one that you can catch live on HighSchoolOT.com and on HighSchoolOT social media next week. It's going to be J. Mike Blake on the call for the Alpaca Chicken Game of the Week between Millbrook and Leesville and a top 25 matchup. Thanks for joining us tonight, J. Mike.
All right. Have a good night.
Let's take a look at some more scores from around the state of North Carolina. That game that J. Mike had tonight was one of 3 unbeaten matchups in North Carolina. The other 2 were between High Point Christian and Trinity Christian. High Point Christian picking up a 44-8 win over Trinity. And then in 8-man football, it was an unbeaten matchup between Cary Christian and John Paul II. Cary Christian in the second half outscores John Paul. They shut him out in the second half and win 20-14. Other unbeaten teams in action tonight, North Stanley, they remain unscathed. 23-6 over Thomas Jefferson. Arundel Parrott 50-0 over Pungo Christian. Pender remains unbeaten with a big win over Anson. That was a unique non-conference matchup. Carver, they pick up their first loss in a big way. Reedsville runs away with that one 44-8. Charlotte Latin shuts out Langtree Charter tonight 42-0. Croatan escapes Havelock. Havelock got up first in that game. Croatan scores the final 14 to remain unbeaten. South Davidson, a 49-8 win over CPLA. Forest Hills, a close one with Parkwood tonight, 25-21. Beargrass Charter shuts out Columbia 38-0. And Allegheny and Starmount, that game got postponed and moved until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. We move on here on the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. We're going to go bring in Leica Beebe, who joins the broadcast. Leica had North Pitt, North Johnston tonight. How'd that one go, Leica?
Evan, I actually pivoted. You
Okay.
mentioned an undefeated matchup. Well, you mentioned an undefeated watch game between Croatan and Havelock, and I actually pivoted at the last second and headed out to Broad Creek this evening.
You made a good choice, though. That's a huge win for Croatan.
A historic win, yes, indeed, and it really had to do with the Cougar defense. Well, obviously, Havelock has been a really good program over the years, but this season they've had a little bit of a struggle to start the season. Now 1-5 on the year. Did get their first win last week against Richlands, but this is all about Croatan proving to folks in the eastern part of the state that, hey, we're a good football team too. And a lot of people had questioned if their 5-0 record was legitimate. Well, they are very much a legitimate contender in the Coastal 5A 6A after tonight. A fantastic win over Havelock.
Yeah, Havelock scores first in that one. An impressive play, by the way, for Havelock to go up there. An incredible touchdown grab to grab the lead there. But what does it say that Croatan just kind of takes that punch and is able to punch back and hold the rest of the way?
Yeah, you were absolutely right. Zyking Patillo had come down with a fantastic touchdown catch on a 4th and 16 play after Havelock had a great drive and then went backwards three plays in a row. But the Croatan Cougars offense responded in the second half in a big way, led by their running back Andrew Boucher, who this guy is a very underrated prospect in the 252. This kid has been producing at a high level all season for them. Of course, the catalyst at quarterback has been Cannon McBride. Obviously, most know he was a standout soccer player for them last year and also kicker. And he moves into the quarterback position and has been a huge catalyst for why Croatan is off to a great start this season. He found Ryan Robinson for the opening touchdown in the second half. Then after a stop, Boucher gets a 13-yard touchdown run to give them the lead. And from there, it was all about the defense. The defense just stymied Havelock in the second half. There were some big runs from their quarterback late in the game, but ultimately the secondary and the front four were just getting after the quarterback every play, it seemed like, in the last two quarters.
Well, that is Leica BB, High School OT contributor, who had a great one tonight. A historic win for Croatan, who remains unbeaten. Again, 14-7, the final score from that one over Havelock. Leica has highlights, interviews, and a story going up later tonight on HighSchoolOT.com. Thanks, Leica.
Thank you, Evan. Appreciate it.
When we were talking to the guys at Scoreboard Radio, we were going back and forth with some score updates from that big East Wilkes versus West Wilkes game. We were joking that would Aikman Chambers ever get out of that game? And it turns out that he did after a long and lengthy delay. He joins us now on the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. Aikman, it took a while, but in the end, East picks up the big win over West. I think Aikman, your mic's muted, I think.
Can you hear me?
There
now?
we go. We got you now. Yeah,
Okay.
Big win for East.
Yes, East Wilkes victorious 27-9 over West Wilkes tonight. A game that was dry in the first half. We played the first half, then played barely a minute and a half of the second half before we went into a lightning delay here in Rhonda tonight. It was over an hour delay in this matchup. West Wilkes started out strong in this one. They came out. Mitchell Rangel took control with some field goals early on. West Wilkes led this game 6-0 early on, but East Wilkes, not to be denied, the ground game that we know is so potent for this Cardinal attack really came into play in this one. Ty Bumgarner and Austin Nash were the big playmakers tonight. Austin Nash with a pair of big touchdown runs in this one. He had one for 71 yards and the other one for 34 yards. And that ended up being the difference in the game. Also for West Wilkes tonight, a big loss. Andrew Herman, who was the big playmaker last week in that game in the victory over Wilkes Central, late in the first half, he went out with a leg injury. Do not know the extent to that. That really hurt the Blackhawks in this game, losing their bell cow running back and Andrew Herman. And then in the third quarter, after we started back here tonight, starting quarterback Holden Gentry also went down with injury. So the Blackhawks played a receiver at quarterback to end the game, and then a mismatched their middle linebacker in Hayden Gentry, who is the older brother of Holden Gentry, was playing running back for basically the rest of this game. It was not a good night on the injury front for the Blackhawks. Hopefully they will be able to get some guys healthy before that big matchup with Allegheny on next Friday night.
Yeah, it was good to see. I think one of the takeaways early for West Wilkes is the fact that they were able to initially kind of ride some of that momentum from last week into the start of this one. But what does it say about East Wilkes to take that initial punch or two from West and be able to answer back and continue that momentum even through that delay?
Yeah, absolutely. East Wilkes showed incredible resolve in this game. The way they took that initial blow, things did not go well. West Wilkes went down, got the field goal. They immediately, when they kicked off, East Wilkes muffed the kickoff. West Wilkes recovered it. The East Wilkes defense stepped up really big in a position where East Wilkes could have been down 13 or 14-0. They were only down 6-0. This defense really stepped up when it mattered, and they weathered the storm. And it showed the resolve that we all knew this team had, being the senior leadership that was on this football team going into this year. And now East Wilkes has set themselves up to take control of this Mountain Valley Athletic Conference with this win over West tonight. The big thing to watch, Starmount Allegheny going to play tomorrow morning, I believe, in their matchup getting rescheduled.
I was going to ask about that, yeah.
Yeah, last I heard they were going to play tomorrow morning, I believe. Starmount will get back on the bus and head to Sparta to play Allegheny. That game coupled with this one will dictate the top of this conference. East Wilkes has the leg up now, getting the win tonight. Whoever wins that Starmount Allegheny game tomorrow will be the second team in line to do battle with East Wilkes for more than likely the conference championship over the course of the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what are the advantages to playing the winner of that one, or, playing Starmount on a short week? Obviously, West Wilkes has Allegheny as well, so both of these teams are going to get a team on a short week here. But this momentum that East Wilkes has built, they played two really close games to open the year against High Brighton and Mount Airy, but now this is 3 straight wins and 3 quality wins at that heading into that Starmount game. It must feel really good if you're the Cardinals.
It has to, because everybody all season long, this was a game I felt like going into tonight. It was one of those things, it was a win that would have done wonders for a West Wilkes program, because not many people expected them to be at the doorstep of the position they were in going into this game. And for East Wilkes, it was almost one of those, I felt like, where you were looked at as you were supposed to be here. You were supposed to be in a game like this to prepare for Starmount next week. And now we set the stage, depending on what Starmount does tomorrow up in Sparta. We set the stage for the game we all thought would be the determining factor in this conference from the summer, and that was East Wilkes Starmount. Now, granted, it makes it tougher to look at right now, simply because we don't know the outcome of that Starmount Allegheny game at this point. But if Starmount goes and beats Allegheny on Saturday, we are set up for, in my opinion, again, the conference championship game in the Mountain Valley, barring anything crazy. And I will go out on a limb and say if Allegheny beats Starmount in 2 weeks, it's going to be Allegheny's got to weather that storm against West Wilkes next Friday night when they play each other. And funny enough, Coach Scotty Green, that is where he went to school, the West Wilkes head coach, and also was a former coach at Allegheny as well. So there's extra emotion in that game next Friday night as well. So it's going to be a good couple of weeks in the Mountain Valley, and I'm excited for what could transpire over the next couple of weeks.
Well, that is Aikman Chambers, host of the Blue Ridge Football Podcast, who had tonight's rainy affair in the second half between East Wilkes and West Wilkes. It is the Cardinals who come away with the 27-9 victory. Thanks, Aikman.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
I was mentioning some of those really close final scores from tonight, one of those being the Randleman-Lexington game. I bring in Stefan Goodwin now, who was there. That was kind of a back and forth one. How did that one go?
I say Lexington hopped out early to a 13-0 lead, and towards the end of the second half, Randleman just put some plays together and made some quick scores. They scored 3 plays back to back, and then on to the second half, it was pretty quiet. Then for the rest of the night, pretty much a defensive battle.
What stood out to you the most about Randleman in that one?
Randleman's quarterback.
Yep.
He stood out big. He stood out big for me tonight. He made a lot of big plays, and he just managed the ball and did what he needed to do to get the win.
So that's a big win for Randleman. I was just talking with Aikman there. You know, that East Wilkes team had lost 2 in a row, then they've rattled off 3 straight. Randleman, they won their first game of the year. They lost 2 straight. Now that is 3 wins in a row. Again, a 21-19 win tonight over Lexington in that one. What do you think a win like that, a close one, can do for a team's confidence as they're kind of in conference play? I think that's the second or third conference play now, or game now, for the Tigers, and especially under a new head coach. But obviously, you see a lot of football, out in the Triad. What do you think that type of confidence does for a team like Randleman?
That game and what that brings for the team, I think that helps you throughout the conference and the rest of the season to finish out strong, maybe end up conference champions in that conference.
Well, that is Stefan Goodwin again. He had a close one tonight. Randleman escaping Lexington 21-19. He's going to have highlights from that one up later tonight on HighSchoolOT.com. Thanks for going out there and catching that one tonight for us.
Yep, thank you.
We roll on here on the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. We're going to take a quick break here and hear from a message from Talk It Out NC.
Don't fall for the myths. Get the facts about underage drinking.
Myth: teens bounce back fast and teenage athletes can perform just fine after a night of drinking alcohol. The fact is, alcohol can hinder athletic performance for up to 3 days, delaying recovery and causing long-term issues with muscle loss and weakness. But don't just take it from me.
Choosing not to drink as an underage athlete has really helped me significantly. I've been able to focus, keep my priorities straight, and it's helped me separate myself from, many other people.
Get more facts at talkitoutnc.org.
Well, as always, we thank our partners at Talk It Out NC. There's never a bad time to start the conversation about how you can end and put a stop to underage drinking. Visit talkitoutnc.org. Again, that is talkitoutnc.org, where you can get the resources that you need to make safe and smart choices when it comes to preventing underage drinking. Again, you can go on highschoolot.com right now and check out the Talk It Out NC statewide scoreboard. It has all of the top scores from around the state, all of the results. It's the most up-to-date statewide scoreboard that you can find in North Carolina. We're going to take one more look at those top 25 scores on the Talk It Out NC scoreboard. As we had mentioned, there were a couple games in Mecklenburg County that had been pushed back due to inclement weather. They're now starting to roll final. You can go online and check out some of those scores as well. Let's start with number 1, Grimsley. They pick up a 66-6 win over Western Guilford. Huff shuts out West Mecklenburg tonight, 43-0. Providence Day, that game is final at 55-21. West Charlotte, they have a big 93-yard touchdown at the end of the game to defeat Mallard Creek tonight, 32-9. That is a huge win for the Lions. Mallard Creek had back-to-back top 10 victories in the state of North Carolina over the previous 2 weeks. They beat Myers Park, and then last week they beat Cardinal Gibbons. Tonight, Coach Sam Griner and West Charlotte, they put a stop to that one, 32-9. Weddington, a close one with Sun Valley by the Warrior standards. There's 21-6. Millbrook, as J. Mike Blake and I had gone into depth about, they beat Rolesville 28-7. We're going to get Joel Bryant's thoughts on some of those results as well. We roll on here on our top 25 scoreboard. Hoggard, the win over West Brunswick. Tim Hauer helped break that one down for us, 34-7. Cleveland with a 42-28 win over South Garner. Watauga keeps on rolling, 49-7 against Asheville. J. Mike Blake mentioned Landon Melton over 400 all-purpose yards tonight and a 28-7 win over Apex Friendship. He threw for 309, ran for another 108 in that one. Ashbrook 44-0 over North Gaston. Leesville Road a 56-0 win over Athens Drive ahead of its appearance next week on the High School OT Game of the Week presented by Alpaca Peruvian Chicken. More top 25 scores. South Point defeating Huss 53-6. East Lincoln shutting out Bunker Hill 57-0. And Brevard defeating North Henderson 52-18. I mentioned Joel Bryant. We bring him in now as he had one of the final games in the state go final, but he had one of the best games in the state, and that was West Charlotte's big win over Mallard Creek. Joel, it felt like Rakeem Finch, he had those 2 early touchdowns, and from there, that's all the momentum that the Lions needed to just ride the rest of the way to a big win.
Well, Rakeem Finch had the 2 touchdowns in the first half, but Mallard Creek came out strong in the second half. They hit Khalil, I think his name is Pierce, for a long 75-yard touchdown. That cut the score to 10 there in the second half. But West Charlotte, they responded on offense with a touchdown of their own, a nice drive, again by Jamori Nichols and Rakeem Finch. He completed a kind of a freelance play where he broke through a sack and rolled to his right, and then found Finch in the back right of the end zone for their third connection of the night, and that pretty much that's a touchdown that pretty much got West Charlotte pulling away there, and they scored a couple other times. Later, Jamori Nichols had a big 75-yard keeper, and then later there was a long touchdown run by West Charlotte as I was packing up my stuff. So it ends up being 32-9, and kind of a statement win for West Charlotte. They played a tough schedule. Mallard Creek did as well. But West Charlotte lost 2 games in overtime to pretty good teams, Grimsley and South Pointy. I call them South Pointy from South Carolina because they have the E at the end. But yeah, I think West Charlotte kind of felt a little bit disrespected. I think people probably was writing West Charlotte off, especially after the KD Cotton transfer away. So I think they wanted to send a statement tonight, and I think they did that.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about that Katie Cotton transfer and some people quote unquote writing him off is that he didn't play for him this year. So what they've been doing this year has been this iteration of West Charlotte without him. I think maybe people could project a little bit higher about if he was going to return to their lineup from an injury. But again, this has just been a really talented West Charlotte team from start to finish this year, even with the 2 close overtime losses that are 2 really quality losses that I don't think really is going to affect them too much in this one. But again, they put a stop to some great momentum by Mallard Creek. As I had mentioned, they had 2 top 10 wins over the last 2 weeks. Joel, other results from around the state that stand out to you, obviously the Millbrook-Rolesville final in that one. There's just a couple games along the way that, I thought we had some good football, albeit not a ton of great games across the state, not the biggest, most loaded schedule, but some games that certainly early in conference play have helped teams put their stamp on their run to potentially raise a conference title.
I don't really know what the results are besides the Rolesville Millbrook game and the Jordan game. But yeah, I'll talk about the Rolesville game. So, from what you were telling me is that Rolesville just struggled blocking Millbrook. Rashad Streets and Marquez Wilbert, the transfer away from Wake Forest. We knew that Rolesville's offensive line wasn't going to be as good as last year's, but you would still think that the amount of talent they have at the skill spots would be enough if they can just get it out fast, right? So it's interesting that the offense just sounds like it was kind of just really in purgatory tonight. So I'm going to be curious to go back and watch that one. Not quite sure what the ceiling is on this Rolesville team if they can't get the offensive line stuff figured out.
Yeah, some other final scores from around the state that were from some intriguing close games. Obviously, that Randleman-Lexington game. Randleman comes away with a 21-19 win there. Laney escapes Ashley tonight, 21-18. Tim Hauer helped break that one down. Ashley had a chance late in that game to potentially tie it with a field goal and was unable to. West Carteret, a 1-point win over Swansboro, 26-25 tonight. Charlotte Catholic overtime against Porter Ridge, 1 point, 14-13 in that one. East Meck defeating Ballantyne Ridge, 19-13. That was another one-score game across the state. Lee County, 10-7 over West Johnston. Some of those undefeated games we were talking about, obviously that Croatan Havelock game, like a BB there for us. That's a huge win for Croatan.
Yeah, that game was either going to be like, okay, Havelock's back on track, or Croatan's off to their best start like ever. And being Havelock, I think for the first time, that's definitely a win that's going to, really get that community rolling there. I think starting 6-0 at Croatan is pretty big for them. And Havelock, very curious to see what the rest of the season looks like for Havelock. I was kind of thinking by this point they would have things turned around, but clearly there's still some more work to do for them.
If you did not see earlier this week, Joel Bryant every week puts out the undefeated teams that are left in the state of North Carolina entering this week. There were 40 of them. Apex Friendship was one of them. They dropped that game to Jordan. Some other unbeaten teams that fell tonight. Again, there were 3 unbeaten matchups. Curie Christian shuts out John Paul II to come from behind in the second half and win 20-14 tonight. High Point Christian left no doubt in a 44-8 win over previously unbeaten Trinity Christian. High Point Christian, they remain unbeaten. Shelby, they hand Stuart Kramer their first loss of the season, 51-29. Reedsville takes down previously unbeaten Carver, 44-8. But outside of that, everything else was the unbeaten teams moving on. That includes North Stanley defeating Thomas Jefferson, Arundel Parrott defeating Pungo Christian tonight, Pender over Anson, Charlotte Latin shutting out Langtree Charter. The Croatan Havelock scores, South Davidson beating CPLA, Forest Hills defeating Parkwood, and Beargrass Charter defeating Columbia. Also, Lewisburg shut out Carborough tonight, 42-0. The only unbeaten team that remains without a result is Allegheny, and as we talk to Aikman Chambers, that game is tomorrow morning. That game is at 10 a.m. So
and look, I mean, some people will say that undefeated teams are not all created equal, right? Jonas said that last week. But the reality is, this year with the new RPI formula, your own winning percentage now counts as much as the opponent's winning percentage. So they increased your own winning percentage in this year's formula. So these teams that are undefeated right now, they have a very nice pathway for themselves. It doesn't really matter if you don't really play a tough schedule. If you get to, 9-1, 10-0, you're going to be in pretty good shape for a seed this year.
Yeah, at this point, you're 5-0 or 6-0. Like, forget who you've played. It's not easy in high school football to win 5 or 6 straight games to open up a season. So at this point, like, who cares who's on the other side? Either you scheduled really well, but still you got to take care of what's in front of you. And that is what over 24 teams have done so far to this point this season.
Well, it's also proof that they're not really like beating themselves, right? So they're not showing up to the game and showing up and just doing everything wrong that they plan to do. So there's something to be said for that too.
That's Joel Bryant. He had number 4 West Charlotte's 32-9 win tonight over number 5 Mallard Creek. Lots to get into with Joel over the coming days. Lots of news from around high school football in the state, including more and more transfer news, midseason transfer, something that was not on our bingo card, but it's there. We got to address it. So we're going to dive more into that probably over the next couple of days, maybe on an episode of HighSchoolOT Press Box. But that's happening. And then also, if you have not already, head over to HighSchoolOT. Joel breaks down some frustrations with coaches, NCHSA schools, football coaches specifically, over the seeding date for the high school football playoffs. Typically, it's seeding Saturday when all of the teams find out what their round 1 fate looks like. But this year, because of realignment and going to 8 classifications and having to host so many state championships, that initial weekend after the final games on the final games in week 12, I believe, week 11, week 12 of the football season, when they go final October 31st, that weekend, the NCHSA is hosting 32 state championships in 24 hours. And because they're hosting 32 state championships, they don't have the personnel or the staff or the resources or the time to be able to put out brackets that are going to be available right away on Saturday. So in the name of time and efficiency, it's starting to the word's starting to get out that could potentially be Monday, and that messes up a lot of
that's
planning.
the day that they've set that date. They've set Monday as the date.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of planning, and it messes up everybody's schedule is what it does. It really kind of puts some coaches behind the ball of what their typical routine is, especially during the biggest time of the year, and that being the playoff season. So Joel has a couple quotes from some coaches around the state. There's already been some good dialogue on social media from people around the state on what their opinions are on the topic. But obviously Joel dives deeper into what this looks like, why we're at this point, and whatnot. So you can go to HighSchoolOT.com. Obviously, tons of football coverage from tonight's games. But along with that, you can check out Joel's piece about seeding Monday, which is intended for the first week of November this year. Thanks for joining us, Joel. We move on here on the High School OT post-game show. We're going to wrap things up here with one more message from our partners at Talk It Out NC. One last reminder, never a bad time to start the conversation to stop underage drinking. Visit talkitoutnc.org to learn more and get the resources that you need to have that conversation and make safe and smart choices. We thank you guys for joining us on this week's episode of the High School OT post-game show. Again, highschoolot.com. You can check out all of the coverage from tonight's games across North Carolina. You can look at the Talk It Out NC statewide scoreboard. And Sunday night, we'll have High School OT Press Box. We'll dive into a lot of topics there as well. But one more message from our partners at Talk It Out NC.
Raising kids is a roller coaster. Sometimes you laugh, sometimes you cry. But most times you wonder how your kid turned out so well. That's how. You did the hard work, made the right decisions. Like talking about alcohol before it could be a problem. Go to talkitoutnc.org. Get resources on how to talk about underage drinking. So Mom, Dad, keep up the good work. It's worth it. Talk early. Talk often. Talk It Out NC.